kind of naively thought, oh, I've made the animation, that's like the hard bit, like, it's gonna be really easy, I'm gonna churn out, it's all gonna be great. And then it turns out making something that was originally moving into something still is really hard for the brain. And with all the support from Becca and Ray, shout out, we worked through it to kind of take all those moving things back into still images. Because the original challenge I had with the animation was turning like still storyboards into something moving. And so it was like the reverse of that, taking something that I now saw as a moving thing into like single still images. I think as well with animation, it's like you see the whole movement happen, but in a comic you have to decide when that's going to stop and when you're going to like move on to the next panel. And so that was one of the most difficult things of like how much do I show and what gets left out. And that's definitely like a learning process that I've gone through and I'm going through as I try and make more graphic novel like this work.
Because also like you really did do a reverse Uno on yourself because the comic is a lot of double page spreads, so you really did go from like in a way you sort of went from like the movement of the animation to like as slow as you can possibly tell a comic. Like, the slowest way you can tell something in a comic is a double page spread for like a single double page spread, and almost in a way it's kind of giving back to storyboards. It's a really sort of fun interpolation between like the animation and the comic book world. That's a comment, not a question, so I should give you a question. That's just a bit of ego story. So, what inspired you to make your comic wordless, and how did you handle the pacing and storytelling of a silent comic?
I always try and think of like a really elusive, mysterious answer, but the real answer was that I did try and add dialogue back in the first part of the process. And it all just kind of sounded really corny. And I added in like another character, it's like this whole story, and then I was like, it's a bit cringe. Like, I don't know, like it kept getting like too defined, if that's the right way to put it. Like every time I added in dialogue, I felt like I was telling people what was going on, whereas I thought the bit that was more interesting was not knowing what was going on. And so I just ended up being like, I'm not going to add dialogue, useless. Because I kept trying and it just kind of felt like it was making it a very like, oh, this is happening, they're saying this. So that's kind of how it came about.
I mean, that makes sense as well because the comic's about dreams and it's very dreamlike and it wouldn't really make, like, it makes much more sense for it to be silent in a way and also, like, and to have that sort of dreamy quality to it. How did you develop the art style from the animation, particularly in the use of colours? Because I noticed like a sort of a tea leaf, not really a tea leaf, but like a sort of a blue colour, the animation was very prominent, and then it wasn't, like for the comic you went very grayscale, so like red breaking through. So like, what made you sort of decide to make those changes?
That's an interesting question. I think with the animation, when I was first making it, there was a lot of like texture in the concept art that basically had to be stripped back because of the budget, which was like the biggest thing I learned when making animation, is that it's really expensive to make an animation. And those animation dreams that you have in your like head when you're like pitching it to this scheme, and then it's like, cool, yeah, that sounds really good. However, we cannot afford that. So when I was like going back to the drawing board with making it as a comic book, one of the reasons I wanted to do it was so I could like add in like all that texture that basically got lost because of like budgeting restrictions with the animation. And so the animation kind of looked quite flat, so I wanted to give it more of like a traditional feel. So I went through a lot of, I guess, testing where I did a lot of pencil studies, and then I found this like watercolour brush set for Procreate, which changed my life. I mean, the book would look completely different if I didn't randomly one day decide to like buy that set off that person. And then it was really by chance of when I was doing the storyboards, I was using just 2 colours. The red to show like the detail, what like the things to like focus on, and then the more navy blue colour for the rest of it. And then it kind of stuck when I started testing it out when I was drawing pages. I was like, oh, this looks pretty good actually. And so I like stuck, with that colour scheme. And I did try, I think in the beginning, when I was testing it out, to add in a lot of colours. But then I was like, I don't feel like I can sustain this for an entire book and like make it look good. And I just kept falling back onto like just the 2 colours because I just felt they looked really good together. And it was like I didn't want to overcomplicate it. It's like the same with the dialogue. I didn't want to overcomplicate it and just add too much in. If that makes sense.
It does make sense. Can I ask you a question that was on the list I sent you? What was it like going from working with a team when you were making the animation to working, well, again with a team, but like much, in a way it didn't change at all, but like, you still work with a team, but it was much more like you had to draw everything, and like, it sort of becomes much more of a focused solo project.
I mean, when I was doing the animation, it was an eye-opening process of learning how to delegate tasks to people when you've like never explained things to other people, really like art things to people before. And then I was like, at the end of it, I was like, oh my god, I feel really bad for everyone who worked with me, because I was just like, could you do this? And then the like animators would be like, what? They'd be like, please, sending them like random reference images from like Neon Genesis Evangelion, like, yeah, that one, kind of like that. So I think that was like the biggest thing for me. I was so used to working by myself and kind of just doing everything that the animation was the hardest one, was like working with a composer and like knowing how to explain to them without getting like cringed out what you wanted them to do, and then them being like, how do you like the sound of this? And you'd be like, yeah, I think that sounds good. So I guess going back to doing all of it, it was a bit weird, yeah, because when you're like working with like lots of people, you've got a lot of people to like fall back on. But when you're by yourself, it's kind of hard because you are kind of doing everything. But I had a good support network. I'm going to plug Becca and Ray again, because it's really good to just be able to talk to people. Because when you're like fully on your own, that's what I'm a bit scared of. Is that knowing like how to get advice on like storyboards and stuff, because you can look at stuff like way too much by yourself, so it's good to have other people to kind of give you that external opinion, and you're like, this looks terrible, and you've got someone, 2 other people to be like, no it doesn't. So yeah.
You're trying to wrap us up. We did start a couple minutes late, okay. So I was. Can I have 1 more minute for an audience question? Yeah. Does somebody?
I'll allow it.
Thank you. Does someone in the audience have a question for Eleanor? Yes.
What was your favourite part of the publishing process? I know you said it was challenging moving it from animation to the comic. What was your favourite part of doing that?
Am I lost to the end? I mean, it was, it was fun. It was very intense. I did have to do the art at like a very busy period of my life where I just decided to do loads of things at once, and then I was like, yeah, sure, I'll draw like 12 pages. How many pages was it a week? Like 7? A lot. It was a lot of pages. And I was like, I'm not cutting this down because I'm gonna make it the way I want to make it. But yeah, definitely seeing everything at the end and having this time away from it, and then being able to see everything again. I was like, wow, that was kind of cool.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us. Can I have another round of applause for Eleanor?